So, hi, and welcome to SpaceBar, Mindful Pauses for Conscious Conversation. My name is Yvette. I'm the daughter.
And I'm Linda. I am the mother.
So, welcome to our listeners for today's episode. And today we're going to be talking about two things that have been very impactful for both of us. Number one is a book and a program called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And the link to the book will be in the comments down below. And then the other topic, in honor of the fact that Hurricane Ian, it'll soon be a year since Hurricane Ian had impacted our lives. We'll be talking about the recovery and how we can work through grief and loss on a personal level. So let's start there with The Artist's Way. How about that?
Well, that sounds good. So what I want to do is I'm going to hold this up because this is Julia Cameron's book, but this is a compilation of three different books in here, and her Artist's Way is available just by itself.
Yeah, to then not be intimidated by a 500-page book.
Yeah, that's just a little much. It's actually more than 500 pages.
Oh, is it really? I had the same version, so I don't know how long it is.
Mm-hmm. It's like 700 and something, I think. So,
how did you find The Artist's Way to begin with?
You know, I had the book for a long time. This is when we lived in River Reach, in the apartments. And I had that book, and I had a bookshelf in the living room, if you remember. And it sat there, but I looked at it for a couple of years, and I tried to get through it. I tried the exercises on my own. It's a 12-week program, just so people know. And so I attempted, but I attempted like maybe 3 different times, and it was hard to do on my own. I had no one to share with. So I had no one to be accountable to. That was the key, was to be accountable and show up with the work to show and tell. So just by chance, I met Mary Lou at the Unity Church in Naples. And she she asked me if I'd like to do The Artist's Way. She was starting on a program to be a life coach, and she thought that would help her do some of the work. So when she asked, then I took the book off of the shelf and I actually did the program. And probably one of the hardest things to get through was that those morning pages.
Morning pages.
Morning pages, just so people know, it's 3 pages. It's called a brain dump, and it's 3 pages. And it depends on what size, 8.5 by 11 little book, but she suggests 8.5 by 11.
She does. Yeah.
So full of.
Yeah, because she says that the smaller pages just don't give you enough time to dump whatever is that hamster wheel of storytelling that we have going on in our minds, in our consciousness. And we need to get it out of us, absolutely get it out of us. But go on about the morning pages though.
So anyhow, that was the hardest thing, I think, to do. But it was a 12-week program, but Mary Lou invited Tara over to do this. So there were 3 of us. Unlike the 3 dogs. That's a grandma joke.
That's a grandma story inside. That's an inside joke.
That's an inside joke. So anyhow, she invited Tara to do it with us. And we met in Mary Lou's kitchen then for much more than 12 weeks, because it was during summer and people were going away. They both lived someplace else. They weren't here full time. So it probably took us close to 6 months to a year to finish it.
Oh, holy cow. That's a long time. Well, if you were to go fast forward today, you could have done it by Zoom and have gotten together, which is such a great form of technology to be able to access and stay on that path for 12
Path.
weeks. Yeah.
So doing morning pages for that long was really hard
Hmm.
to do. And then, so this morning, I was looking through the book to sort of refresh my memory about it. And one of the first things I came across was the creative affirmations.
Hmm.
And they really felt good when I read them. And it says, there is a divine plan of goodness for me. There is a divine plan of goodness for my work.
Hmm.
And that's creativity is, few people talk about it as a spiritual thing, but it is. There's
Hmm.
the divine downloads that we get while we're doing those morning pages that show up. I mean, a lot of it is just the same thing over and over and over again, because you're not supposed to necessarily, you don't read something and then write about it. You're
No,
just getting
no.
stuff out of your head.
You literally, this is what I have done with the morning pages and the artist way is I literally get up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I get my glasses, some water, and I go and sit down. It's the first thing that I do. And look, we're not looking to write War and Peace in the morning pages.
No.
It's not for that. But I think it's to work through the blocks. I mean, because we have blocks around creativity and we have certain definitions of what we think creativity should be in our lives. So those morning pages again are not for they're to tap into the creative inside of us, but not to create anything from a result of them.
Yes. And I actually still have my journals. I called them journals, but I wasn't journaling. I was just dumping my brain onto pages.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how much of it repeats itself. It's
Yeah.
boring if you realize that your brain is most of the time very boring, but
Yep.
you tap into the gold and you can be off and running.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh yeah.
so I'd like to say that one of the other things that I had a problem with the doing the morning pages, because I think people should know when they start. I had some childhood issues, and one of the chapters asks you to go back
Hmm.
and to your childhood, and you write about things. And since mine really wasn't all that pleasant, I did not want to go back and dig into that. I
Yeah.
felt like I was far enough past that. But I dug my heels in for a while before before
Yeah.
I actually did that. So I think those things, the morning pages themselves, and then having to go back and revisit old memories
Hmm.
was not pleasant. But once I got past them, I want to say that when we were finished with that, I just want to tell a little story. Mary Lou had come up with, she wanted to have a six-figure income.
Hmm. Well,
Tara,
hold on one
okay,
second, because I want our listeners to understand that the purpose of doing the artist way is, yes, to tap into creativity, but it's about manifesting your dreams. And I believe firmly that
yes,
this book, her book, teaches you how to dream again, because it's something that as we grow up, we forget our dreams. We tuck them into a box and put them away because life steps in, and we end up doing other things because it's how we have to earn a living. And
yes,
it may not define who we are, and it may not, those things that we're doing may not represent our dreams, but the artist way helps us tap into that sense of dreaming again and manifesting a new reality for yourself, and getting out of the old habits and finding out where your belief systems actually come from, the source of them, which is what that's what the intention is. And I mean, Julia Cameron has done screenwriting. I think what Martin Scorsese was her husband. So you can imagine
Yeah.
the source. But at the same time, just because you're married to Martin Scorsese doesn't mean that you actually believe in the value of your own creative life force. And then before we continue on with what the three of you wanted to manifest, I just wanted to give our listeners an idea because I have the book open. So with week 1, you're recovering a sense of safety. Week 2, recovering a sense of identity. Week 3, a sense of power, a sense of integrity, a sense of possibility, a sense of abundance, a sense of connection, a sense of strength, a sense of compassion, a sense of self-protection, a sense of autonomy, and a sense of faith. So this is the source and the inspiration behind each week for the practice of it. So I just want to give them an idea of, because just for saying, well, the morning pages are, a big part of it, obviously,
Right.
but there's so much more to it that inspires you to take a different look at your life and dream again about if it was not a perfect world, but putting yourself back into that little girl that you were dreaming that one day you would grow up to be a ballerina, grow up to be a dancer, grow up to be an artist, grow up to be a cruise director, a writer, whatever the case is. But that's where the creative outlet comes, and the importance of this in finding a sense of authenticity and living your best life. So with that, I would like for you to share what your dreams were for the three of you and what happened.
Okay. The first one I was telling you about was Mary Lou, and she wanted a 6-figure income. Tara was not married and had a list of 70 things that she wanted in a husband. And she wanted a husband in particular. And mine was, at first I didn't know. I mean, it took me a while to figure mine out. So I wanted to be a writer. Mary Lou went back to real estate because she wasn't making enough money as a life coach. And she did get 6 figures. Mm-hmm. Tara, unbelievable, found a man that 70 items. We shook our 70, but she got all of them.
Well, I have go ahead. So I would ask you a question about that, but go ahead. Finish your thought.
She got all 70 things. The man, are you believe it? The man was a friend of her mother's best friend who lived upstairs. So it was like he didn't live, in Naples, but he was related to them. I mean, he was right under her nose. So that was funny. And me, like I said, when I finished, they said, well, what do you want to write, or who do you want to write for? I said, I don't know. I just know that I want to write. That was it. And the rest of it came naturally. And I might add, I do not have, other than my high school education on a class in journalism, I had no background in it at all. So
yeah, you didn't go to college, you had me. So
that's right.
Put a damper on, as we discussed in an earlier episode.
So what did you want to ask?
With Tara, with manifesting the man who had 70 plus things from her checklist, was it so she didn't, how do I say this? A lot of times we see someone or we know someone and then we want a relationship with that person. So we set the intention to go on a date or, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that when she was making her list of things that she wanted, she didn't have him in mind. She just had a husband in mind, and this is what the universe provided for her.
She had never met him. He came to visit her mother's friends, and she met him that way. So he really wasn't in her life at all. He was something that was way on the periphery. And they're married and they live on Marco Island. And one of the things, amazingly, she wanted music in her life. He plays the piano.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So the power of manifestation that comes from the artist's way is pretty profound.
It's way profound. And what it did for me when you were talking about unearthing your dreams, one of the things that I think the morning pages does is that it gets below the programming
Mm-hmm.
that we've had. It's like digging a well, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't give up and dig someplace else. You have to keep digging in the same well till you hit water.
Yep.
And that's really what that did. So I have a career from it, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
for 20 years. And before that, I wrote for Home and Design magazine. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I liked about it was it brought beauty into my life in different ways. And
Yeah.
one of the things that was very natural for me was that we had a whole library, at least I did, on self-help books, healing, natural healing, herbs, you name it. We had a whole wall of it in and it was fits perfectly with that. I
Yeah.
mean, my career was just, it was made for me, I think I could say. It was just waiting for
Mm-hmm.
me to get beyond those morning pages and dig into all those things that you mentioned. And it covers everything. You meant all the different things that you
Mm-hmm.
talked about, the subjects, it covers them.
Yeah. Yep. I know what you mean with the work, because although I manifested my dream career of, working on cruise ships, I had not done the artist way prior to that. So I don't think I know I didn't manifest it that way. But I know when people talk about how we have the power to manifest, it actually lies within us. They're not exaggerating, and they're not lying. It really truly does, and I believe that. And I have to take moments to remember, um, because working on cruise ships was never something that was a normal occupation for anybody that I knew growing up in
Not
Pennsylvania.
then. Not then. It was not.
No, no clue. I had one grandmother who was just go travel the world, had no idea how that was going to happen, but guess what? It did. And I got paid to do it. I had another grandmother who said, you need to go to college, meet a man, settle down, have a family, who never understood my gypsy soul of traveling.
No.
So I had the devil and the
Yeah.
angel sitting on one on each shoulder. But I really believe, because I know when you read and watch things about manifesting, it's the importance of making it visceral, of seeing it and tasting it and smelling it and hearing it and feeling it. So you have your whole body is engaged in the belief that this is going to happen for you. The universe is going to step in and give it to you. It will deliver it if you just let go. But at the same time, it's letting go of the mind going, that's never going to happen for you, on the doubts that come in. But it's really about having faith. And I believe that, all the years of sitting and watching Love Boat with a pizza with no green peppers on it every Saturday night. And
Yeah.
I wanted to be Julie McCoy,
Yeah.
and I got to be Julie McCoy, and it manifested itself. And even my cousin asked me not too long ago, his business partner at one point had said to him, like, how did your cousin get into the cruise industry? And he goes, I never knew. He said, I never asked her. So he finally asked me. And although I said it was, I made light of it at the time, saying it was dumb luck, it really wasn't. I really believe that I was meant to do that. Um, and I've used the artist way since that time, because I'm still in the cruise industry and I've been in it for over 30 years now. That's hard to believe. I've
Yeah, it
been
is
in
hard
the
to
cruise
believe it's
industry. Yeah. In some way, shape, or form. And although I stepped out of it for a while, I was still using the skill set that I had cultivated on ships, just in a different way. But as time has gone on, I have wanted to evolve myself in different ways of tapping into creativity and really using the artist way for finding my life's purpose, and really putting two and two together, because I don't believe I'm meant to, sail the high seas until, I'm old and gray. That's not my purpose. But finding my purpose and finding my sense of self, a deeper sense of self, has been beautiful work through the artist way. So that was my experience with it, and continues to be my experience with it.
I want to say that things come in steps. And probably the first step for me was home and design was a second step for me to get where I'm. Even my first job in writing, I did work in real estate. I worked for a neighborhood in North Naples. And I worked for a man who saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And that really is an incredible thing, for someone to recognize your talents before you do, your skills, what you're capable of. And so Lou kept saying to me, have you sent you need to send your work, because I was writing some things for the newsletter for that community.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you need to send your things to Salk and Whalen Public Relations. And I was like, no way. I mean, I'm not that kind of, that was a high level PR agency that represented real estate in Naples.
Yep,
And so
did.
I didn't have that kind of confidence in my work. And so he was relentless, kept asking me on a regular basis, you need to put a portfolio together. He told me. I didn't even know what a portfolio was, but that was just all my work that I'd sent. So finally, just to get him off of my back, and I figured he'd stop asking, I said, I sent it. Well, then it started, have you called him? So that he never ceased. And so it took quite a while, but I finally did call Dwayne, who answered the phone and said he wanted to give me a writing assignment. Well, geez, he wanted 2,500 words. I was writing little paragraphs
for the community newsletter.
For the community newsletter. And I said, one of my favorite expressions when you ask me to do something is, sure, I can do that. I mean, I have always said that to everything. So I said, sure, I can do that. He said, I'll pay you $500 for it. I don't care how long it takes you, 3 weeks, 3 months, whatever, but you write it. So I had such fun, putting that together, such fun doing all the research, because it was on the history and the growth of Bonita Springs, where I now live.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so I did all the investigating, wrote the article, then I sent it to him. I didn't hear anything from him. So I was convinced that he wasn't hiring me. And so after a while, I got the courage. It took a lot from me to actually, call him and ask him. He said, oh, yeah, what you sent me is right here in the garbage can. And I went, oh, my heart sunk, went down. I was like, I need to hang up now before I embarrass myself too much. And that was his system. Everything went on the credenza behind him. And then when it finally got to the point of the edge of the credenza, it went to the top of his garbage can. It was just this next step where he was going. Nothing went in his garbage can except the things that were going to make it to his desk next. So he approved it. He'd come and get your check. So I did. And I was still working in real estate. And so the day that he said, come get your check, it was a couple weeks after that, he asked me, called me up and asked me if I knew anyone who would wanting to have a part-time job with his agency. I said, I don't even know anybody who writes. I mean, that was just, I didn't hang out with writers or anything.
You didn't consider yourself one of those people who are volunteering.
It never occurred to me to say, well, I can do it. So when I got off of the phone, Mary Lou was sitting there. And she said, who is that? I said, it was Dwayne Salk from Salk Wham. Well, what did he want? Well, he wanted to know if I knew any writers. And I don't know anybody. She said, you call him back right now. You got more excited over that $500 check than you did the $3,500 that you made for commission on a house sale. And I called him up and took the job. And then I have to tell you, when I went in, he wanted to pay me, I was like $18 an hour or something like that. And I said, no, I want 25. Where that came from, I don't know. But he said, you prove yourself and I'll pay you $25. And he did. So he taught me really what I needed to know. He had a red pen, and everything that I wrote had to go through him before it went to the paper. And it had red all over it for grammar, and not for spelling, but mostly for grammar. And finally, one day it had an A+ on the top of it.
Ah.
And I went into his office and I said, oh my God, I made an A+. He said, you deserve it. You're on your own now. Do what you got to do. And I did. So that was those things take steps. From there, that's when I went to home and design. Yeah. And from there, I went to natural awakening. So sometimes the dreams don't show up in the big form right away. They show up in the little form right away. And then they become steps, like they did for you.
Yeah. I believe that it's because for me, this is my opinion, is that it's the universe giving promptings, giving you what it is that you want, and seeing whether or not you're going to accept it, to receive the gift. Because if you say you want something, but every time something that supports that dream comes along and your first response is no, then the universe doesn't continue to give you, although sometimes eventually it comes along as a cosmic 2x4, as you like to call it, that whacks you upside the head.
I had one of those. That's enough.
Yeah. It's like, hey, wake up. And I'm trying to do something for you. Understand it,
Yeah.
I obviously, you know this, but maybe our listeners don't. So I'm married. I have a husband who will be joining us at some point on our podcast. Today happens to be his birthday, but I had done the artist's way. I dabbled in it because I think you bought the book, you had it, and then I took a copy of it with me on the ship and tried to do it. One of the hardest things you can try and do is when you're you're trying to just take care of things right in real time. Doing this kind of work is not the easiest thing because you've got just too much going on otherwise. Yes. But I had dabbled in it, and I wish I had used the Edgar Cayce school of experiential and just put it under my pillow and let my subconscious do it while I was sleeping. Didn't work out that way. But I believe that this was a vital part of coming to a place of opening myself up to getting married. But the pivot for that, I think the biggest catalyst was talking about books that influence you. I had gotten a book called Calling in the One.
Yes, I remember that.
And so I met my husband in 2012. And that story will come up in a later episode. But the year before, I had gotten this book, and the two women who were the authors, they were doing an online program with it. So I signed up for that, and I was, getting into, and it was the first day and was the first call that people from all over the world were calling in for their guidance, right? And thousands of people. It's unbelievable how many were on that call. And I remember standing in my kitchen and listening to this, and I hadn't really done a deep dive into the book, but I had done enough to recognize that there was, some good guidance and some good homework with it. But I remember listening to their conversation, and I hung up. I never went back to another call with them. I didn't finish the book, but the one thing that I realized in that moment was that I wasn't calling in the one being the other, someone outside of me, a husband. The person I was waiting for was me. The person I was waiting for all along was me. And it was a sense of coming home to myself. And I believe that the working with the artist way, dabbling with it prior to that, was enough of the opening of a doorway. I recognized the truth of that when I heard something other in in calling in the one, because we always have a sense of we need for someone else to rescue us. We need somebody else to solve our problems. We think that we'll be whole when we have the thing or the person in our lives. And that wholeness is actually already within us. And that wholeness we can find by digging the same hole that you mentioned a few moments ago, and by doing simple programs like this and holding yourself accountable from week to week. And, like I've gotten stuck on chapter 8, a week 8, which is a sense of strength. I've gotten stuck on it for 3 weeks, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with it because I'm working through the block of recognition. So, practicing self-compassion, and not putting too much pressure on yourself to get through this. It's not a marathon. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Yes.
Yep.
It is a marathon, but it's one that's well worth running.
Yeah.
Most people who do marathons practice for, so many miles each time that they go to achieve. And before they actually run a marathon. So you can look at it that way. It's in small steps. And, I gave up. I wanted to be a dancer. I was always dancing with the refrigerator door when I was young. That's the thing I remember, to the music. And when I got to this point doing the artist way, I was too old to be a dancer and to, do that kind of training. And then next thing I wanted to be was an artist. And I had talent in that when I was young, and which got passed along to you. And then I wanted to be a writer. So now I have to dig. I have to probably do the artist way again to dig to see what's under that for what's next. Because when you achieve your dreams, it's wonderful. And I feel like a purpose and a mission in my life is achieved through the work that I do. But there are other things that need the dreams that were part of that. Somehow they need to be fulfilled so they can be let go. So you're looking now and I'm looking now, but I think that part of what we've done is find this as a means of helping people, because it's to serve the common good. That's why we even do any of the work.
It's very true. Even with going in and teaching yoga nidra meditation and guiding people through a yoga therapy experience in a classroom, which I get to do. And I remember last summer when I was teaching, there were mornings when only one person would show up for yoga nidra meditation. And it's not, it's a niche. It's not something that everyone does. Meditates is what I'm getting at. But yoga nidra meditation is probably the easiest form of meditation, because you lay down just like you're going to sleep at night or taking a nap in the afternoon. And so there's no doing, so it's a guided experience. And there were days that my one particular student would say, do you just want to cancel class? And I would always say, no, I don't want to cancel class, because number one, I had to drive a half an hour to get here. So I'm going to make the most of my time while I'm here. And number two, most importantly, is the work that we do together. It helps in your relationships. There's a ripple effect with it that comes in a positive way. It's you become the pebble in the pond of your entire life. And I think even with but with the artist's way, you become, as I mentioned before, a better version of yourself, a more evolved version of yourself, one who is definitely more self-aware, also one who is less reactive and more responsive, more open, more willing to recognize that fear and excitement really feel the same in the body.
They do.
But the mind is what makes it fear or excitement.
Interpret.
It does. And when you can step out of that influence, internal influence, that could be the voice of your mother still ringing in your head, or something that your teacher said, or an ex-boyfriend said, the words that people say have such repercussions, and they stick in us, So when we go to, take a risk and decide that we're going to make cupcakes for a living and just have fun decorating cupcakes and putting them on Etsy or putting the farmer's market or whatever the case is not listening to that voice that's in the head. And you learn how to differentiate by doing programs like the Artist Way.
I want to say that my first introduction to the thoughts in my head, not being who I was Deepak Chopra. I listened to one of his programs, and this is many years ago. I mean, 35, 40 years ago. And he said something really interesting. It was like, eavesdrop on your thoughts. I'm like, what the heck is he talking about? Eavesdrop. But I started to, and that was actually the and that's when they run. And I will tell a cute story is that when we lived in New England, I have those 2 lazy boy chairs that I've had, forever. And I was sitting in one of those and I fell asleep. And when I was in that twilight zone of waking up, there was a baseball or a basketball game going on in my head. And I was like, where did that come from? That's not even me. And that's when I went, oh my God, I am not my thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so you have to become aware of those things. What's the negative self-talk? Mm-hmm. And teach yourself positive self-talk, because your whole body listens to that.
Your body does listen to it. And I'll say to my students every once in a while, if you were to be at a dinner table, sitting across from somebody who talked to you the way you talk to yourself,
ooh,
would you stay or would you leave? And most people would get up and leave.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah.
That's a really good piece of advice. Just,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we've talked about that. Mm-hmm. And it starts to build what we're going to call the resiliency, because you have all of that programming from those many years that is on top of that little candle flame. Mm-hmm. So resiliency that it took for you to recuperate, you and Robert too, and bounce back, make it through, do what you had to do, recover from Ian taking many of your life memories, most of it, and just wiping things out.
Yep.
So why don't you talk about that?
Okay. All right. And I will do my best to just allow my emotions to be present with whatever shows up.
Yeah.
But we obviously the 1-year anniversary of Ian is coming up for us. And we were going for dinner the other night. And I said to him, and I'd been journaling about this in my morning pages because it's been on my mind, obviously, and celebrating the success of how far we've come in actually less than a year. It's pretty amazing. And
it's very amazing. It is very, very amazing.
Yeah. But, I believe that because we embraced our vulnerabilities and did not get into an isolated sense of self in recovery, we were there to support one another. And we also learned to say yes when people offered any form of help. So I just said to him, if you were to say, what are your top 3 lessons that you have learned as a result of Hurricane Ian? And resiliency was number 1. Number 2 was the growth of our relationship. And number 3 was, this is just, I have to laugh now because it makes me laugh. It made me laugh when he said this. If somebody had walked up to me and said, okay, I'm going to just, next week, next month, I'm just going to wipe out, 80% of what you own, 80% of your stuff. Just take it out, take it away, just wipe it out. However, I ask that you have complete and utter faith and trust that the universe will provide for you and life will be better than it was before I took that stuff away from you. He said if somebody had come up to him and said that to him, he would have said, you're basically full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when you're in it and you're dealing with, the impact of the storm and what's happened in your life, it's pretty, you don't think about, okay, well, a year from now, it's going to be like this. But just so our listeners understand, we were in New York when Ian was working its way up through the Caribbean. And because the forecasters were back and forth, and they were predicting it was going to go in north of us, of where we live, further up the coast. So we really weren't that concerned with it when we left for my father-in-law's 80th birthday celebration. So we set off, and our house was as normal. We hadn't done anything because we weren't. What's the point of doing hurricane preparation? Because there's no hurricane coming that's landing in your town. Well, we kept watching the storm while we were gone, and then eventually, obviously, the hurricane came into Naples and also Fort Myers Beach. And unfortunately, Fort Myers Beach has taken the brunt of all the attention with media over the months, but Naples is still in serious recovery from it as well. So when we came home from New York, I flew us back into Fort Lauderdale, rented a car, and the woman this is just amazing, even the woman who rented us the car knew what we were driving into. So she gave us a Jeep that could go through muck, mud, whatever, because we had no idea where we're coming into, because we lived on a canal system at the time. And we knew from our neighbor that our neighborhood had taken significant water. So our house, as we found out, we took 3 feet of water in our house. And it's not just the ocean water. Because there's so much water coming in, the sewer systems can't handle the deluge. So not only are you dealing with the salt water from the canal and the ocean coming up from the back bay, but you also have to deal with sewage coming up through your toilets, your sinks, your tubs.
Yeah.
So when we got back, we drove into the neighborhood, and it was such a really weird experience, because we parked the car in the driveway. The truck my husband's truck was where it was, only askew. We had a boat, and it was up on the sidewalk, same level as the house. Plants were kind of in their same spot, but not. And it was so surreal. And I had the keys to the house, and the house looked normal except for the ring around the house. There was a brown ring that encircled the house, and that was how high the water had settled itself. Granted, there were 5-foot waves rolling down the street in front of our house. And our elevation was what determined how much water we took. Our neighbor took 5 feet in her house. We only took 3. So anyway, I had the keys, and then we opened the door, and my husband had to actually use his full body weight to push the door open, because all of the stuff had floated, that was floatable, had floated down and settled behind the front door. And we couldn't, and he had to like shove it open for us to get into. And when we walked in, again, it was still extremely surreal, because the carpets were all squishy, but things looked somewhat normal, even though we'd had 3 feet of water in the whole house, not just in one room. And this is something for our listeners who live in an area that you might have a hurricane or even some kind of flood. If you ever leave home during you're evacuating, cover the vent on your dryer vent, because our dryer vent was down low outside the house. It was so the water that came in, it not only did it come up through the sewer, it came in through the dryer vent. We had so much water in our dryer, and the washing machine was knocked over. I mean, the appliances were, it was absolutely just an absolute mess. And when you have all of this, it's just 2 of you, to like, where do you start?
Yeah.
Where do you even consider starting on all of it? So we walked the house and took a look at every room and to kind of just assess what and wrap our brains around what we were going to do. And we were opening up the windows, trying to get some circulation through. I mean, just because obviously the first thought is, okay, it's wet, it's mucky. I have no idea what is in this water that I'm walking through, but mold is the next thing. We need to get our stuff out. So we started doing some things and it came time to leave, and went to the front door to walk out. And I have this little wooden turtle that I've had since I was in Hawaii, and I always keep the house keys, car keys in it. And it's like the last thing you can grab before you walk out the door. Well, the house keys weren't there. We couldn't find them. They were MIA. We had, and in the mess that we've been working in all the different rooms and trying to assess and take notes and a plan of attack for the following day. And so to not have the keys, I'm like, oh my God, where are they? And the amount of emotion that you're trying to process, your body is on overload. And typically in most relationships, you would get into a blame game. Why didn't you put the keys back where they belonged? Why didn't you do this? What about this? But that didn't happen. This didn't happen at all, which was extremely mind-blowing, which showed us how far we've come in our relationship as it is. But it helped us set the tone for the full recovery process. So when we realized we couldn't find the keys, my husband he said, honestly, who would want to come in here and steal this crap anyway? He used different language than that, but
Yeah.
and we just started laughing. It was the easiest way to dispel the tension, because we were both waiting to see what the other one was going to say or do because of lost keys. So I walked out the front door, locked it. He went out the back sliding glass door, jerry rigged him, and we came back the next day. But because of that pivotal moment, it created a shift in both of us. So as we processed everything, I mean, there were moments where he would take personal stuff of mine and it would have to be hauled out to the street to be thrown away. And I had to fight in myself. Oh, I want to keep that, or I can clean that up. Or why are you taking the stuff, but I didn't even have that. I didn't even deal with that. I let things unfold as they needed to, because I understood that it was only stuff. Now, was it easy the entire time? Absolutely not, because my breaking point came when it was time to go through Christmas decorations. And for that, I asked one of my friends to do for me, because I knew I couldn't do it myself. That would have been the breaking point for me emotionally. But
you need to say why Christmas, why that stuff. You need to tell people why.
Because those are my Christmas decorations I've collected since I was a little girl. I mean, everything, there's all these memories that are attached to those decorations. Now, there were some things that I was able to salvage. And when it came time for Christmas this past year, it was cool to open up whatever she had salvaged. I didn't even look at it. I had no idea what she had salvaged on my behalf. But when it came time for Christmas, I was lamenting about, oh my gosh, I had this and I had that, and now I got to go buy everything new. And oh my gosh, it's going to, I just had this whole story. And then when he said, I think there's some bins out here that have some Christmas stuff in it. And he brought them in and he opened them up. And there was the Christmas decorations that had survived, that she had cleaned up and put into a container for me. So that was, I just sat there and cried because I was just so grateful. Number one, it was like my first Christmas.
It was like Christmas. Yeah.
It was like Christmas. So the resiliency that was our capacity to be resilient expanded through all of this. And it was we didn't lose our tempers with one another through all of it, talking about practicing compassion for yourself and practicing compassion for another is that's a huge gift that you can give yourself. So it was one of those things what I would never wish on anyone ever. However, at the same time, what it has done for both of us on a greater level has been really expansive, really expansive. I don't know how much more to say about that.
Well, I
And
think that
expansive.
you
Yeah.
forgot to say that you did have a friend who came over and did the boxes. You said you were at the breaking point, but you didn't say Shantae came over and went through your Christmas things for you.
Well, I did. I said,
Did you?
yeah, I said, I knew that I couldn't do it myself because I had walked past the storage shed. And I knew what was in there, but I knew if I did that, I couldn't. So I would open a bag and then close it up, and open a bag and close it up. And then finally she came over to help us out. And, in all that, we had you want to talk about when you begin to say yes to people and allow people to do for you. We're so trained to say, no, I got this. No, I got this. No, we're good. We're good. This is our first response. But in reality, when you let people help you, number one, it is an energetic exchange. They want to do for you. So let them. But our neighbor, she had 2 little kids and she couldn't help clean up, but she provided us with coffee 3 times a day. She cooked 3 meals a day for us. We had people dropping off food for us. We had a friend whose house we stayed in who had a massive generator that kept us. We had a place to go back to that was dry and a nice shower at the end of the day. We had all these people who would just drive by offering water, food, supplies, time, money. I talked about being vulnerable. I put our situation on Facebook. Oh my God, I didn't want to do that. It was putting your vulnerabilities public. That was hard. It was really hard, but people donated. They donated their time. They donated their money. They donated stuff. I mean, and the gifts still continue to to arrive. So I really, and saying yes to the universe is such a huge thing, but a lesson learned from doing programs like the Artist Way.
I want to say that your new house to me, is better and nicer than the one that you had, which was really, really lovely.
Yeah.
Although it happened to be on the water, which I'm glad you're not there anymore.
Yeah.
But you had some really, really great gifts that came as a result of things that people donated to you. I might say fit perfectly into your house. You would have never, fit those armoires that you got they would have never made it into the house. No. So
No.
your new space is really, really, it's so you and Robert.
Yeah.
It feels really good.
It does feel really good. And even that was the universe. I had put on Facebook that we're looking for a place to live because our friends had donated their home. They were out of town for 3 weeks and they just said, you can stay while we're gone, please feel free to do that. And if you haven't found a place to live after we get back, you're welcome to continue, staying there until you find a place to live. But putting this out on Facebook, I was getting all these things of, oh, we have a house for rent that's $10,000 a month. I mean, it was crazy. And the market, there was just nothing here because there were so many people that were displaced. And not only were people displaced, but all these people were coming over from Miami and Fort Lauderdale trying to help recovery. And they were taking hotel rooms and apartments and Airbnbs and really limiting those of us who were, really needed a place to live because you can't live in a wet house. I mean, I don't know how people did that after the storm, but I put it on Facebook, was getting all these, emails and messages and phone calls. And all of a sudden I thought, I'm going to text this one person who was one of my students. He's been involved in real estate in Collier County for 40 years. I know he travels a lot, but he might know somebody. It was a complete and utter fluke. He was the only person that I texted, the only one. I texted him, said, hey, I don't know where you're at, but this is what's going on. Within 10 minutes, he called me. And within 10 minutes from there, we had a person who's a friend of the family who called. And within 4 hours, I was doing a walkthrough of the house. And then from there, we signed the lease, and we were able to start to move our stuff from our wet house into this one versus figuring out how to put it in dry storage and do all that kind of stuff. So it was really grace of the universe that has really gifted us with that. So lessons learned along the way, and being willing to receive is a big part of it. Big part of it. Yeah.
It's remarkable. And we can look at other people's lives and learn from them. We don't have to live it ourselves. We can learn.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Well, we need to begin to wrap up our podcast for this week. Is there any closing comments or anything you want to share before we wrap up?
I think probably just that if you can muster through the morning pages, get started. I think that's it. I mean, listening to your story again, brings tears to my eyes. It's so remarkable as a mother to listen to your child where they are in their lives and speak about it, and to be able to see it, to be able to be witness to it.
Yep.
You get to see the growth, and that there's a wonderful human being who's living because of you, but they're living their dreams, their way, and how it is benefiting others with your yoga nidra training, how you're and how you've done with your life. What you've done with your life is remarkable, and I'm very proud of you.
It's Mom.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to get up. Now I'm going to cry. I didn't cry during my Hurricane Ian piece, but thank you. I appreciate that. We don't just celebrate moments of pride when we graduate from high school or college or get a promotion. When we promote ourselves, when we self-promote ourselves because we are evolving as human beings, I think that is far more impactful, hearing those words from you, than anything else at any other time in my life. So thank you, Mom.
You're welcome. I'm happy to say those things, and they come from my heart. So
I know. Well, thank you. So thanks for our conversation about the artist's way, and obviously Hurricane Ian touch point.
Yeah.
And we are SpaceBar, mindful pauses for conscious conversations. And stay tuned for more episodes.
See you next time.
Don't count the days, make the days count.
That's good.